Number 1.
Savedi was last seen leaving Ferrer Foods, where she was employed as a receptionist, in South Plainfield, New Jersey on August 19, 1998. Savedi was driving her blue-gray four-door 1988 Mazda with the New York license plate number 425 GT or U25G2. An image of her vehicle is posted with this case summary. Traffic records indicated Savedi drove over the Outerbridge crossing and returned to the New York City borough of Staten Island, her place of residency. Phone records indicate she called Charles Chorman, her sporadic boyfriend of 4 years, shortly thereafter. A photo of Chorman is posted with this case summary. Later that day, Savedi and Chorman were seen at a bar they regularly patronized. Witnesses said Savedi looked as if she was in good spirits, but Chorman appeared to be brooding. This was the last time anyone saw her. She has never been heard from again. Early the next morning, a witness noticed Chorman was disheveled and his face and hands were scratched. He said he'd gotten into a bar fight. Savedi was scheduled to meet her new roommate for dinner and then pay her landlord for her new apartment in the Tottenville area. She left her dog and $1,000 behind in her temporary apartment. Savedi's family said that it was highly uncharacteristic of her to leave without making arrangements for her pet's well-being and without announcing her travel plans. Savedi's car has never been located. Her loved ones believe that Chorman is responsible for Savedi's disappearance. Chorman had been arrested and charged with physically assaulting Savedi in September 1997, nearly 1 year prior to her disappearance. He pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of disorderly conduct, and Savedi won an order of protection from the courts at that time, which stated that Chorman was forced to stay away from her. However, they continued to see each other. Chorman has a prior criminal record. In the 1980s, he served 4 years in prison. Authorities said he was the mastermind behind a car theft ring that stole 500 vehicles. Savedi believed that Chorman was separated from his wife at the time they began their relationship in 1994. Chorman apparently kept 2 residences at the time, one with his wife and another with Savedi. Savedi moved out of the home she shared with Chorman, and her new apartment burned down shortly thereafter in what is referred to as a suspicious incident. Savedi was preparing to move into her new permanent apartment at the time of her August 1998 disappearance. Chorman was rumored to have been romantically involved with his wife's sister, Elizabeth Bump, in the early 1990s. Bump vanished from New York City in 1993 and has never been located. He initially cooperated with authorities during their investigation into Bump's case at the time. Chorman has never been arrested in either woman's disappearance, but he was convicted in an unrelated automobile theft case in New York in 1988. He maintains his innocence in both Savedi and Bump's cases. Savedi was declared legally dead in August 2005. Some agencies state that Savedi disappeared from the New York City, New York borough of Staten Island.
Number 2.
Blanca was last seen in Aransas Pass, Texas between 4:30 and 5 p.m. on August 6, 1989. She was supposed to meet a female friend and then walk with her to the friend's home in the 200 block of South 11th Street. This residence was a block and a half from her own home. Blanca spoke to someone in the 500 block of Greenwood at the corner of South Whitney, then walked westbound. A short time later, Blanca's friend went to the witness and asked if she'd seen Blanca. She never arrived at her destination and has not been heard from again. Her mother notified police when she had not arrived home by 11 p.m. and an extensive search was launched, but turned up no sign of her. Foul play is suspected in her case. An anonymous tipster sent a map to a Texas news station in June 2001. The letter purportedly contained the location of Blanca's body. Authorities searched the area near Aransas Pass, but no evidence related to her case was discovered. One of Blanca's friends stated she was acting moody and not herself on the day of her disappearance. Blanca also refused to attend church that day, which is uncharacteristic of her. It is not known why she was behaving this way and whether her attitude was a factor in her disappearance later that day. Blanca's mother once dated a violent and abusive man who was involved in the drug trade. Her mother believes this man was responsible for Blanca's disappearance, but there is little evidence to support any theory. Blanca's family moved to Idaho a few years after she went missing. Her disappearance remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Ramirez was last seen in the early morning hours of June 5, 2004, leaving his residence at the 200 block of Junction Avenue in Cave Junction, Oregon. He was planning to take a day trip to Kelly Lake, which is located in the Siskiyou Wilderness just across the California border. Ramirez has never been heard from again. His personal possessions and his cherished dog, a 3-year-old brindle-colored pit bull named Candy, were found a week later in Page Mountain Park. A photograph of the dog is posted with this case summary. Candy had been shot twice in the head with a .22 caliber gun a few days before she was found, and her leg and paw were also injured. She survived. There was no sign of Ramirez at the scene. His .22 caliber Beretta is missing. Ramirez's car, a dark green 1997 Oldsmobile Bravada SUV with the Oregon license plate number VHW 491, disappeared with him. A photograph of a similar car is posted with this case summary. The vehicle was found in Klamath Falls, Oregon in July 2004. The man driving the vehicle, Juan Miguel Ramon Soto, was arrested. Authorities have identified 2 persons of interest in Ramirez's disappearance. The men, Jose Luis Villegas Cavada and Joel Brian Rico Orozco, were both in the Happy Camp, California area at the time Ramirez disappeared and were driving a white 1996 Chevrolet Monte Carlo with Oregon plates. Photographs of both men and a similar vehicle are posted with this case summary. They are being sought for questioning by police. Investigators announced in 2006 that they had located evidence in Ramirez's case in an unspecified foreign country. They believe he may have been kidnapped and murdered and that the crime probably took place in California. Some items relating to his disappearance were found on Native American reservation land in Northern California. Ramirez's disappearance remains unsolved.
Number 4.
Maude Offeri was an industrial design major at North Carolina State University in 1997. She arrived in San Francisco, California on June 1, 1997, to attend a summer photography course at the University of California at Berkeley. She was employed part-time at the former Spinelli's coffee shop, now called Tully's Coffee, at the Crocker Galleria in San Francisco's financial district during the work week. She worked at Café Musée in the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art during the weekends. She lived with a roommate on Jane Avenue in Oakland, California at the time and was also taking a dance class. Maude Offeri asked a co-worker at Spinelli's for directions to Baker Beach, which is located next to Land's End Beach, on June 23, 1997. Her shift ended at 3 p.m. that day, but she was seen approximately 45 minutes later on the Crocker Galleria's second floor with an unidentified blonde woman. The unidentified blonde woman with Maude Offeri has never been located. Witnesses said that she was holding a green Jansport backpack, like Maude Offeri's, at the time they were in the Crocker Galleria. Maude Offeri's family believes that it may be possible the female and Maude Offeri had plans to meet at the Galleria and may have departed together. The manager of Spinelli's, however, told authorities that Maude Offeri left the building by herself on June 23. Regardless, she has never been seen again. She never picked up her last paycheck, which was for $400. Authorities utilized bloodhounds in the ensuing search for Maude Offeri. The dogs tracked her scent to the Geary Street No. 38 bus from the stop outside the Crocker Galleria. That bus travels across San Francisco to the Sutro Park Beach area near Land's End Beach. Maude Offeri's scent was also traced at Sutro Park Beach, but the dogs lost the trail at the shoreline. No other evidence was located at either scene. Maude Offeri's personal belongings were searched, and a newspaper personal advertisement from the San Francisco area was among her possessions. The advertisement contained the following message: "Friends. Female seeking friends to share activities who enjoy music, photography, working out, walks, coffee, or simply the beach, exploring the Bay Area. Interested, call me." It is unknown if Maude Offeri placed the advertisement herself or if she answered the ad. All records from June 1997 have since been destroyed at the newspaper's office. It is also unclear if the advertisement is related to her disappearance. An anonymous caller contacted KGO-TV, the ABC affiliate in San Francisco, on July 10, approximately 2 weeks after Maude Offeri was last seen. The caller said that he knew the identities of 2 women who abducted and murdered Maude Offeri and placed her remains under a bridge in the Point Reyes area of Marin County, California. The women in question told authorities that they believed the phone caller was John Anuma. A photo of him is posted with this case summary. The females had apparently been harassed by Anuma due to work-related problems they encountered with his girlfriend at the time, Jill Lampo. The women were preparing to fire Lampo from her position when Anuma allegedly began harassing them. Law enforcement officials questioned him about the incident, and he admitted to making the phone call to KGO-TV to cause problems for the women. Another female witness came forward and stated that Anuma allegedly abused her and threatened to kill her after Maude Offeri disappeared. The witness said that during the encounter, Enuma told her, "Now you know what happened to Kristen Maude Offeri." 3 other women stated that they had incidents involving Enuma and Lampo as well. Lampo allegedly lured the victims to Enuma and were subsequently abused by him. Authorities searched Enuma's residence and discovered Lampo's journal, which was missing pages from the time Maude Offeri vanished in June 1997. It is not known if either Enuma or Lampo is connected to Maude Offeri's case, and no one has been charged with involvement in her disappearance due to a lack of evidence. Enuma has since moved to Hawaii. Investigators looked into the possibility that Robert Durst was involved in Maude Offeri's case. Robert's first wife, Kathleen Durst, disappeared from New York in 1982. Her case remains unsolved, and Robert is considered the prime suspect, although he has never been charged in connection with her case. Robert was charged with the 2001 Texas homicide of Morris Black. He claimed he murdered Black in self-defense and was acquitted in 2003. In 2015, he was charged with murder in the 2000 shooting death of Susan Berman. Authorities don't believe Durst was involved in Maude Offeri's case, but he's still being considered in the 1997 disappearance of Karen Mitchell from Eureka, California, and the 1971 disappearance of Lynn Scholes from Middlebury, Vermont. Robert and Kathleen owned a health food store in Middlebury in 1971, and Scholes visited it the day she went missing. Maude Offeri's case remains open and unsolved.
Number 5.
Nelson was last seen at approximately 8:30 p.m. on September 1, 2006, leaving a party at a friend's residence in the vicinity of the 800 block of Ward Lane and Highway 80 in Princeton, Louisiana. His father called him, and Nelson said he'd seen police lights in the area and thought the police were chasing him. He has never been heard from again. There hasn't been any activity on his phone since he vanished. Nelson lived with his father in Houghton, Louisiana at the time of his disappearance and working on an oil rig. He had moved there from Spearfish, South Dakota about 6 months before he went missing. His family stated he was behaving normally prior to vanishing, and it is out for character for him to be out of touch with them. His son was born months after he disappeared, and Nelson's mother is now raising him. Prior to his disappearance, Nelson had been arrested for possession of marijuana, drug paraphernalia and the prescription drug Xanax. His court appearance was scheduled for November 17, 2.5 months after he went missing, and when he missed the court date, warrants were issued for his arrest. Authorities and Nelson's family believe he is dead, and his family has offered a reward for the recovery of his remains. He has a history of drug abuse, and there were rumors that he died of a drug overdose at a party, and people hid his body. In Louisiana, providing drugs that cause a fatal overdose can lead to a charge of murder. Another theory is that Nelson was robbed and killed for the cash he was carrying. His case remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected.
Number 6.
Sometime during May 1981, Roman told his mother he was enlisting in the U.S. Army for 20 years. He lived on Hone Avenue in the New York City borough of the Bronx at the time. Roman has never been seen again. His family members contacted the military and discovered there was no record of Roman enlisting in the army in 1981 or at any other time. Roman's relatives learned that he had a residential address on West Bay Avenue in Tampa, Florida shortly after his disappearance. Stacks of unused personal checks from First National Bank in Tampa were discovered at his home, along with other personal possessions. He never cashed a tax refund check dated June 10, 1981. A friend told Roman's family members that Roman held a Florida driver's license, and it was discovered that he owned a red Buick or Isuzu automobile with a black interior. He also owned a .25 automatic pistol, which was apparently registered in Florida as well. Florida records have been searched, and no trace of Roman was discovered past 1981. Roman was born in Arecibo, Puerto Rico and raised in the Bronx in New York City. After graduation from Samuel Gomper High School, he attended Hunter College in the Bronx for 1 year. Roman was dismissed from the U.S. Air Force in 1979, 2 years prior to his disappearance. He was previously employed with Time Life magazine in the New York City borough of Manhattan prior to May 1981. He frequented Mexico prior to his disappearance. He had a girlfriend there. He also liked to socialize in bars and clubs. Roman's case remains unsolved.
Number 7.
Kathleen Kelly disappeared at a time when it wasn't unusual for children to walk the streets of a small Pennsylvania borough in the twilight of a late spring day. Kathleen, whom everyone called Kathy, was walking home alone in Springdale Borough, Allegheny County, when she disappeared on May 22, 1981. It was the start of Memorial Day weekend, and Kathleen had been skating at the chess arena in neighboring Cheswick. It was nothing at that time for her to walk from one end of Springdale to another, said her older sister, Judy Stanko. It wasn't rare for Kathleen to leave the rink by herself. She would do that. Stanko, 73, of Lower Burrell was the last person to see Kathleen and wants the peace of knowing what happened to her little sister. My mother always prayed that she would live long enough to see Kathleen again. Now we're at the point where I hope I live long enough to see her again, she said. Kathleen was born in California, along with her brother, Robert, who was about 5 years older. After her father died, her mother, Annabelle Kelly, moved the two of them to Pittsburgh to be closer to family, Stanko said. Stanko, who already had a family of her own, had remarried and was living on Maxwell Avenue in Springdale, about 6 blocks from her mother and 2 siblings. Much of their free time was spent at the chess arena, where Stanko was a floor guard and her husband, John, was an assistant manager. Now slated for demolition, the roller rink was a popular destination in the 1960s, 70s and 80s. That was the thing to do on the weekends, to roller skate, Stanko said. The kids would skate there and then go bowling all night. Kathleen often went to the rink with her brother-in-law, John, and her older nieces and nephews. She was especially close with her niece, Kimberly, who was about 4 years older. Kathy was my aunt, but she was more like my baby sister, said Kimberly Robertson, Judy Stanko's second youngest child. Robertson, 51, of Middle River, Maryland, believes Kathleen disappeared in 1980, not in 1981, the year listed on several sides of the missing person. On the night of Kathleen's disappearance, the kids all piled into John Stanko's car and went over to the chess arena. At some point, Kathleen left by herself and walked the 8 blocks to her sister's house. Although she was the mother of 4 teenagers, Stanko was home alone at the time with an infant daughter, Jeanine. I said, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, it's boring down there. I don't want to be down there anymore," Stanko said. So we talked for a while. We talked about the baby and the skating rink. Kathleen stayed for about an hour and then decided to go home, which was about 6 blocks away. Stanko can't recall whether it was dark yet. I said to her, "Are you sure you want to walk home?" She said, "Yeah, I'll be fine," Stanko said, noting that she felt Kathleen was being evasive. "I truly thought she had plans, but didn't want me to know what the plans were," she said. Robertson believes Kathleen was not abducted, but rather left of her own volition because of problems she was having at home. "My personal opinion is that Kathleen left. She wasn't taken. How she can leave and survive, I have no idea. She would have needed help," she said. Robertson remembers feeling a sense of relief at Kathleen's departure. "My initial thought was, thank God she's gone and out of that house," she said. Then it was, I lost my best friend. I never thought she would never come back. Once it was apparent that Kathleen was missing, the Springdale police were called. They questioned friends and family members, but ultimately treated Kathleen's disappearance as a runaway case. They insisted she was a runaway and that she'd be home by Monday at the latest, Stanko said, noting that there was no organized public campaign to find Kathleen. 9 or 10 years later, Robertson was at home in Springdale one day and received a mysterious phone call from someone she believes was Kathleen. "I remember getting a phone call that just said, 'You know who I am, and I'm fine.' That was it. There was nothing else," she said. Other times, there would be phone calls but silence on the other end. When Robertson would inquire, "Kathy, is that you?" the person would hang up. Robertson wants Kathleen to know, if she is still alive, that it's okay to come home. "I don't feel like she's gone, I just feel like she's far away," she said. Her message to Kathleen is something the two of them said to each other when they were younger. "Love you near and far." Kathleen's case remains unsolved, and her family remains hopeful that she is alive.